Mouthwashing is probably my favorite game that came out last year. I mean, Mouthwashing literally has everything I love in the game. I mean, the art style, horror, sci-fi, the characters, a good story, a lot of symbolism. Literally everything in this game I love. Whenever I started making videos, I knew I was eventually going to make a mouthwashing video. But I mean, this is only my third video. And I just want to get it over with because I really want to talk about this game. Also, I've said this in my other videos, but those didn't exactly pop off. But ignore the beanie. This is not a normal thing. This is a temporary thing. I got an absolutely horrendous haircut, so I'm not normally this chopped, I promise. Also, one more thing before we start. I'm Chief Spin. I make videos about movies, video games, TV shows, music, just things I find interesting. So if you like those things, you should subscribe because I just started and it can only go up from here. Alright, that's enough. Let's get into the story of mouthwashing. Okay, I'm low-key an idiot. I forgot to fully crop out my face cam, so that's what you see on the left. Just pretend that's not there. But basically, the game starts. You're a ship captain, and you purposely drive the ship into an asteroid. And that's what the crash imminent's coming from, and the ship's about to hit the asteroid. Okay, this obviously raises a lot of questions. I don't have to say it. Who are we? Why do we drive into an asteroid? And what's going to happen next? Basically, after the crash imminent, you get jump scared by some goofy looking cartoon horses, and then right after that, the ship hits the asteroid. The screen will go white, and then it'll fast forward a few months, but we'll talk about that in a second. Also, that's the last you'll see of my face cam on the left during the gameplay footage, so rest in peace, man. Also, I don't know if it's just me, but every single time I watch my own videos, I feel like I sound so goofy. So if I sound goofy, I'm sorry about that, but I'll try to fix that. It's only my third video. I'm just getting started. Now, after the crash, we are a few months in the future, and here's where we get to learn about all our characters. Also, I should mention that this story is told out of order. That's really important. The story is told out of order, and you kind of like piece the story together like puzzles on the way. It's really unique, and I really like it. By out of order, I mean the timeline's out of order. Like, it'll switch between like 7 months after the crash and like 7 days before the crash. So that crash at the very beginning is kind of like the big event. Kind of like a BCAC, how we have that in the real world. It's the before the crash and after the crash in this story. And here's where we learn that after the crash, a bunch of emergency foam got, blasted in all the spots that were destroyed by the crash. And that kept the whole crew alive. It's a crew of 5, and the vessel name is Tolpar. That's not really going to be that important, but I feel like you should know that. The amount of characters will be important, but the name of the ship won't. And here's where we get to meet our characters. Daisuke's an innocent, friendly intern for another character that we'll talk about in a second. One thing you need to know about him is that he's low-key mad chill, and he's everyone's favorite character, but he's a low-key an idiot. Next up, we got my boy Swansea. He's basically just a grumpy old dude that's kind of chubby. He's also Daisuke's mentor, so they got a fun little, chemistry going there. Also, he really likes to guard the utility door ever since the crash. Says it's full of foam, but, we'll get back to that later. Next up, we got Anya. Anya's the nurse of the Tolpar and probably the most tragic character in the entire game. Well, other than the next one I'm going to talk about, but we'll save that one for the next one. But I'm not going to spoil what happened, but she's just been through a lot. I'll say that. Next up, we got my boy Curly, and yeah, he's not doing too great. After the crash, he got completely mutilated. I mean, like, his hands are gone, legs are gone, skin's off. I mean, it can't be going too well for the guy. He's also the guy that everyone thinks crashed the ship, so they think that he tried to take all of them out too. But then lastly, we got Jimmy, the person that we play as for most of the game. I'll wait to show you what he looks like because we're not supposed to know what he looks like yet, but you'll find out in a second, don't worry. So basically all you need to know right now is that Curly crashed the ship. Curly was the captain, and now he's the one mutilated on the hospital bed. And now Jimmy has taken over, and he's now the captain of the ship. And you should probably know that everyone hates Jimmy, but you're not supposed to hate Jimmy yet. But trust me, you will. And after Jimmy and Anya talk for a bit, Anya asks Jimmy to, give Curly his medicine because it makes her feel nauseous. And you're about to find out why it makes her nauseous. It's not a very good sound. Yikes! After you give Curly his medicine, you'll find Anya in the lobby having like a breakdown. And Daisuke's just watching. He's not doing anything about it. He's just chilling on the couch. But she does say something very important. That's the reason I'm showing this. Our worst moments don't define us, or our worst moments don't make us monsters. Sorry, I stuttered. Now, this is a phrase that might not mean anything at first, because right now it doesn't. Other than, Curly crashing the ship and all that. But this is a phrase that has so much more meaning to it than you would originally think at the time, but if I were to explain it now, it'd be spoilers, so let's get on with it. After you talk with everyone on the ship, you can then talk to Anya and she'll instruct you to get the code scanner from the cockpit. After you retrieve the code scanner from the cockpit, the whole crew will be waiting for you at the cargo hold. I probably should have mentioned, but it's not important until now, that this is a delivery ship, so think of like a whole universe scale FedEx. So the reason that everyone's trying to get into the cargo hold is because they want to see if there's any salvageable items, because, it's been a few months. They have to be running low of food, medicine, all that. After you walk into the cargo hold, the game will freeze and then transition to 7 days before the crash. Before crash era starts off as us playing Curly and taking a psych eval with Anya. Also, during this conversation, we learned that Jimmy's just kind of messing around, not caring about the psych eval, which does play a role. We also learned that Jimmy's a brony, which, sounds about right. Also, Curly was spitting some mad game with Anya for a bit, but at the end of the day, they're just friends. Also, she delivers a letter from Swansea, so we're about to find out what that's about. And oh my god, look who it is! It's the guy we play as for most of the game that everyone hates. So, according to Jimmy's convo with Curly, we can assume that something broke in the utility room, and we're about to find out what it is. And the problem is, Daisuke got trapped in the emergency foam. Yeah, sounds about par for the course. After we talk with Swansea about, the situation, he tells us that we have to get an X because we're the only one that has the code scanner because we're the captain. And after we obtain the X, we gotta use it to free Daisuke from the foam. After that, Daisuke is freed and he makes a cartoonish youch sound. So after Daisuke is freed, there are two important things brought up. Number one, the vent that he was trying to fix is completely damaged and it's super dangerous. And also the fact that the utility room has cryopods in it. Now keep in mind, after the ship's crashed, the utility room is filled up with foam, so no one can get in there, at least according to Swansea. So after you free Daisuke, you gotta go talk to Jimmy, and Jimmy will bring up that he needs to talk to you in the cockpit, and Curly will also bring up the fact that he likes cartoon horses. Now, I don't really know how to explain what happens whenever you go to the cockpit, but something weird happens that's not normal, and I don't know how to explain it, so I guess I'm just gonna show you the whole sequence without me talking over it. I look so chopped on this camera. Oh my god. Okay, what you just saw, although it might not make any sense, symbolically, it's amazing. So basically, Curly, he wants to be more than just this ship's captain, but a ship's captain is all he'll ever be, and he hates that. He's reached the top of a broken ladder, which is why you see all those broken ladders everywhere. And so that's supposed to. I keep stuttering. I'm sorry. That's supposed to symbolize Curly's depression because he's reached the top of a ladder that doesn't make him happy. He doesn't like a good long haul freighter captain, like for the Pony Express mailing stuff, is all he is in his eyes. And that's really depressing, and that's also something that millions of people can relate to. Because the human dream of being something more than you are is something that everybody has. But at the end of the day, you're just one man, or one person. And there's not much you can do about that. And that's what's making Curly depressed. And basically that's what the hallucination is about. After Curly gets back into the cockpit, he gives Jimmy a psych eval. But they just skip over it because that's not the important part about this conversation. After the psych eval, Curly and Jimmy have like an oddly heartfelt conversation. And this is to show that Curly and Jimmy, they had a good relationship. And they talk about, Curly wanting to be something more than he is. Whenever Jimmy makes it clear that all he cares about is being in control and being at the top. It's likely that Jimmy hates the fact that Curly doesn't like the position that he's in whenever all Jimmy wants is to be in control, aka the position that Curly's in right now. But still, this shows that Jimmy and Curly, they had a decent relationship before the crash and, before Curly got absolutely mangled. This also calls into question what happened to make Curly want to crash the ship. So I want to take the time to appreciate the masterpiece of a soundtrack this game has. Just take a listen for a few seconds. After your heartfelt conversation with Jimmy, Curly receives an incoming message from the higher-ups at the company. But unfortunately, we don't get to see what it is for now, but we will later, don't worry. After Curly receives the news from the higher-ups, the game starts freezing and glitching out just like it did whenever it switched to the after the crash to before the crash. But instead of switching in the timeline, it switches to this scene that nobody really knows when it takes place or if it's even real, if it's a hallucination or not, but it's a pretty cool scene. So I kind of just want to play it out without talking about it and let you see it for yourself.
A business operating at a steady profit can give its workers. Here, in fact, is the answer to a dream as old as man himself. A giant of limitless power at man. Hurry, step right.
It's the name of the game! Mouthwash! Ing. So in this sequence, you walk around, you see the boxes in the cargo hold are actually mouthwash. And you go up to the TV and it plays a mouthwash ad, and this is where the mouthwashing comes into the game. After this whole sequence, it goes back to 2 months after the crash where you're playing as Jimmy again, and Curly is the disfigured guy once more. So before this scene, nobody in the crew knew what they were holding the whole time other than Curly probably because he's the captain and the leader. But they broke into the cargo expecting food, medicine, ship parts to repair the ship, and it's all just mouthwash. Literally thousands of cans of mouthwash. And I gotta say, man, I can see why Curly's depressed. Imagine your whole existence being just shipping mouthwash. That's all you'll ever be. That's all your name is, the mouthwash shipper. So yeah, basically they're stranded in the middle of space, no food, no water, just mouthwash to live off of. I mean, I couldn't imagine a worse situation. But I mean, at least Swansea's getting some enjoyment out of breaking his sobriety streak over getting drunk off mouthwash, so that works. Also, it's said that the reason why Anya was so like acting horrified about them getting drunk off mouthwash was because she didn't want Jimmy to get it. And you might be wondering, well, what did Jimmy do? Well, we'll figure that out later. Okay, so now the timeline transitions again, and now we're 6 days before the crash. So we're playing as Curly now, and Curly's all right. He's not disfigured like he is in the present day. But at the same time, the mission objective is called Break the News, so we're probably going to break news about something. But we get surprise birthdays, so that's always nice. And now we have to bake a cake. The cake is made, and Curly's about to break the news that the Pony Express is shutting down and everyone's getting fired, so. So, yeah, Jimmy's not happy. To be honest, I think that the only reason he's acting like this isn't because he really cares. I think it's just so he seems like the good guy in this situation, that he's standing up for the crew. Because Jimmy doesn't care about anything other than power. And if there's any chance for Jimmy to discredit someone so he looks like the good guy, I mean, he's going to take that chance. Now we're playing as Jimmy again, 3 months after the crash. I think for the rest of the video, I'm gonna let the clip play, and then I'm gonna talk about it afterwards, so I'm not talking over it all the time, because I feel like that just gets annoying after a while. Now, in this sequence, as you just saw, Curly wasn't given his medicine, so he's making these horrible noises that wake Jimmy up. And so Jimmy goes, finds Anya, and she's talking with Swansea. And Swansea gives him some attitude whenever he sees him, so makes you wonder what she said. I'm not going to say fully what she was talking about, but I can give you hints. I'll give you two. One of them has to do with the utility room, and two, the other one has to do with something Jimmy did. The whole rest of this game is basically Jimmy having to deal with not the guilt, but having to take responsibility for the bad and awful things he's done, which we'll see if he will or not. But that ends up being like the whole theme of the game. It's time to hear the gross noises again. Yeah, that was worse than the last one. Also, it just makes me mad how, like, Jimmy blames Curly for everything, even though everything's Jimmy's fault, and then proceeds to, like, basically, like, torture him with the medicine, because there's no way he's just giving him the medicine. You know, he's beating him up like prime Mike Tyson or John Jones would be a better example. And that's not even near the worst thing he does to Curly, which you'll find out what that is later. Okay, the next part's like the coolest looking part of the entire game, in my opinion. It also begins to show the state of Jimmy's mind. I was trying to figure out why I sounded so quiet, and then I realized I had my microphone turned down like almost all the way down in OBS, so I should sound better now. I'm sorry for those few first seconds I accidentally left my mic on during it, but I think this scene is supposed to tell us two things. One, Jimmy's state of mind, and two, Curly's state of mind, because Curly hasn't had the chance to express himself since, he's been like absolutely disfigured. He can't. So this seems to me like Curly expressing regret, obviously. I mean, look at where it led him. He wishes that he could go back and restart, and that he would just be okay with being the top of a ladder that he never wanted to be on in the first place. And it's also a peek into Jimmy's mind. He feels like he's been wrong because of Curly for some reason. I mean, we don't really know. He's an absolute psycho, so he thinks that everything is everyone else's fault and not his, which ties into the theme of the game that we're about to see. Take responsibility. That's going to pop up a lot throughout, like, what the next hour of gameplay I have, but it's obviously not going to be an hour for you. It's going to be like 10 minutes of gameplay probably. I just thought of a good comparison for Jimmy. Jimmy reminds me of Todd from Breaking Bad. Just like this absolute psycho, but he truly thinks he's a good guy. He truly thinks he's doing something good. And you're probably saying, well, what's wrong with trying to get more painkillers? I mean, why keep Curly alive at this point? If I was Curly, I'd just want to be dead. And also, he's given everybody false hope by saying that they're going to get us through this, but I hate to break it to you, but you're not going to get through this. It's over. There's nothing you can do. And I know, like, necessarily providing false hope isn't a bad thing, but you gotta understand. Well, I can't. I was gonna say something, but it was gonna be kind of a spoiler, so I'll get to that point later whenever the time comes. Guess who forgot to mute their mic again? This guy! But like, see what I mean? He's finally in the position he wants to be, the captain of the ship, but the moment he has to do something for other people, it's a problem. All he cares about is control. All he cares about is getting his way, and he always sees himself as a victim, no matter what. And it's frustrating, but that's what makes him such a good character. This is the point of the story where you kind of start to turn on Jimmy. Of course, I've spoiled it already and said Jimmy's a bad guy, but if you played this from the very beginning until now, you see that, yeah, Jimmy has his moments of being annoying and bad, but he's overall not that bad. But this is the moment you start to realize, yeah, this Jimmy guy, he's bad. And it's only going to get worse from here. Also, I don't know if you saw it, but the take responsibility thing came up like twice, 2 split seconds, whenever he was talking to Anya. So that's gonna play a big role in take responsibility for what, you might ask. Well, we're about to find out. But first, we gotta give Curly his medicine. So, yippee. Bro, chill. So, yeah, Swansea is mad about something. Maybe it has to do with what happened with Anya. We'll find out why in a little bit. Are you starting to connect the dots with what happened with Anya if you haven't already? Let me just say there's a reason why she brought up 8 months and the lock on the sleeping quarters in the medical room. Something I love about this game is that they'll take a casual conversation between two people and they'll say something random at the time that at the time you're like, what? And then they backtrack on that later and you're like, oh, that's what they were talking about. That's one of the benefits of telling an out of order story. You piece it together like a puzzle, and that's why I like the out of order storytelling so much. Yeah, your mind goes to bad places when you hear that. I think Jimmy knows what's about to happen, but Daisuke doesn't. And that adds more to Daisuke's character, obviously, because he's just a kid. That's the whole point of his character. He's just a kid that got caught up in a bad situation, and he doesn't know it. Daisuke is a symbol for innocence in this game because all of this is going around him, but he still thinks that, all of it can be fixed, saved, whenever it just can't. And Jimmy knows that, and he plans on using that to his own advantage. And we gotta wait to see what happened with Anya. I'm just now realizing how long this video is gonna take to make. I started working on this at 4 p.m. and it's currently 9:21 p.m. and I'm only 40 minutes in. Are we serious? So, something bad happened to Daisuke. We don't know what yet, but we're gonna find out eventually. All we hear about is this cocktail and Daisuke being severely injured. And that's all gonna make sense in a little bit, you just gotta trust. But first, we have this really cool, intense, what do you call it? Situation, scenario. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, this part's kind of boring to watch, so I don't really think I need to show you. It's just me walking through the area to get to the finish line. I'll show you what happens at the end, but the walk there, I don't think I really need to show you. Actually, I'll go ahead and show every single time the monster shows up because I feel like that's pretty entertaining, right? It's okay, guys. He got mouthwash. He's okay now. Now we're about to find out what happened to Daisuke. So that's gonna be fun. So yeah, that's what the cocktail was referring to. They're gonna drug Swansea so they can get into the utility room, go through the vent, get into medical, and find out what happened to Anya and Curly. Swansea's been getting like very poetic ever since he got a hold of the mouthwash. You can also see his resentment against Jimmy, so reinforces that Anya told him about what happened. Which keep in mind, what Jimmy did to Anya is not has it hasn't been explicitly said yet. Also, I gotta be honest. I remember Curly being in this like way more. He will be for like most of the rest of the gameplay, but I thought he was in more of like the normal story, but I guess not. Also, I want to make it clear, just in case, Daisuke does not know about what Jimmy did. I feel like that last sentence really speaks about Daisuke's character. Because dude's literally in like the worst situation possible and he's still worried about getting a good reference. And it's clear that Daisuke doesn't really understand the gravity of the situation that he's in. And Jimmy knows that and he's trying to manipulate him. Like Daisuke did not want to do that. But Jimmy convinced him that that's the only way. Otherwise, Anya and Curly, I cannot speak. Curly are going to be in trouble. And I'm not even saying it's wrong to, try to get into the utility room to save Anya and Curly, but do you really think Jimmy cares that much? I feel like Jimmy knows it's probably too late, but he has this sense of power he's like obsessed with, and he's using that power on Daisuke, and it makes him feel like he's powerful, right? So he wants to keep doing it for himself, not for Anya, not for Curly. He wants to do it because he feels like he's in charge. There's a lot to talk about. First, I want to start with the cryostasis pods. I don't think Swansea was using them for himself. I think he was using them for either Daisuke or Anya. And I'm sure Jimmy knows this, but he needs to find a way to switch the script to where he doesn't look like the bad guy. Swansea looks like the bad guy, and so he manipulates Daisuke into thinking Swansea's betraying everyone instead of, him being the reason everything bad is happening anyways. Now let's talk about what happened with Daisuke. It's never explicitly shown or stated what happened to him, but we can guess that, he got electrocuted, impaled, everything Swansea said was wrong about the vent. And do you remember what Jimmy did to help? Gave him mouthwash, so he's not doing anything. Now we're going back one day before the crash, so we're playing as Curly again. I feel like the last few times the timelines switched, I forgot to mention it, so I'm sorry about that. Yeah, if I didn't pretty much told you what happened with Anya, you'd probably be very shocked right now unless you actually played the game. So Anya was pregnant this whole time with Jimmy's baby, and it's safe to say that it wasn't consensual. And she tried to hurt herself with the gun. And imagine her situation. She's stranded in space, nothing to eat or drink other than mouthwash, and you're trapped with the person that did that to you. I mean, that's horrible. I wasn't lying whenever she said, or whenever I said, that she was the most tragic character other than Curly. And I also want to make it clear that Curly's not a good guy either. He's not as bad as Jimmy, but he's an enabler. He's a bystander. He knew what happened, and he didn't do a single thing about it. Can't believe they did that, man. Can't believe it. Also, with Swansea, I'm sure he kind of views Daisuke as his son or a younger version of himself. And that was probably the best thing they could have done for him because it's clear he wasn't having a good time. Rest in peace, Daisuke. I gotta be honest, I forgot this is where you see Anya's body, and so I was kind of shocked too. Right in front of Curly too. I mean, Curly is definitely the most tragic character. I mean, he got mutilated in a crash. He lives every second in pain. He just watched someone he cares about take their own life right in front of him. And now he's stuck with Jimmy, the guy that force feeds him painkillers. That poor guy. This reminds me of that one scene from No Country for Old Men where old sheriff, I can't even remember his name. It was a great movie though. Old sheriff is like reading about some murder, and the other sheriff just started laughing just because of the gravity of the situation. I like that detail because sometimes all you do is laugh because you don't know what else to do. We're about to find out what happened right before the crash. The answer we've been waiting literally all game for. Also, I've gotten like no sleep the past few days, so I'm gonna go to sleep. So I'm gonna finish this tomorrow. It's gonna be the same video for you, so you're not gonna notice anything, but I'll see you tomorrow, I guess. What's up? It's the next day now. I turned on my lights, so hopefully it looks better. I look so chopped in this camera, oh my god. Okay, let's get back into it. So, Anya told Jimmy that she's pregnant, so yeah, he's probably not gonna take that well. And now Curly's gonna talk to Jimmy and try to fix everything. Which, yeah, sure. Oh my god, we get to see Curly! Yeah! Also, Jimmy blaming Curly for what happened is quite insane to say the least, which just shows his lack of responsibility, which is like the whole theme of the game pretty much. And again, Curly does nothing to stop it, which shows that he's not a good guy either. He's not as bad as Jimmy, but he's not a good guy. Seems like they downplay what Jimmy did, and that's also a different like point made in this game, where women are treated as less valuable in male-dominated businesses and stuff. Which I mean, it's unfortunate. I got a hot take here, but sexism not good. I don't like it. Jimmy was the one that crashed the ship the whole time. So dude assaulted Anya, resulting in an unwanted pregnancy. Got Daisuke killed pretty much. Mutilated Curly and blamed the crash on Curly. So, and that's not even the end of what he did, but we'll see what he does next. So we got a lot to talk about. First off, Swansea got headshot apparently, so that's always nice. Add that to another like list of things that Jimmy's done, and then they obviously cut off Curly's leg. That's pretty messed up, man. And the reason why he does this is because he feels like he's been wronged, and that his jealousy's taken over, and he wants Curly to feel the pain that he's felt, and the audacity of Jimmy to say that they forgive him just because he was a captain. He had control, which is something that Jimmy wants. It's crazy, and we're about to get into Jimmy's mind in a second. I mean, dude's utterly insane. And the next thing that follows is a series of intense hallucinations in Jimmy's mind. Now, what you just saw is, in my opinion, Jimmy feeling guilt. Guilt about Daisuke. As you make your way through the vents, you see a lot of things that were in the utility room, and you see a miniature Daisuke, as you just saw. He walks away, he disappears, and then you see all of Daisuke's items that were laying by his bed, where the little Daisuke was in the vent. So I think this is Jimmy being guilty, feeling guilty, and regretting what he did with Daisuke. I think this part is Jimmy realizing the monster that he is. He's being constantly surrounded by reminders of all the horrible things he's done. And like it said, no turning back now. He's starting to realize that all the bad things he's done, he can't save it. He can't redeem himself. But it's Jimmy, so he's definitely still gonna try. But now he knows in his mind that he's a monster, but he's trying to convince himself that he's not. And I think the reason why Swansea's into this is because Jimmy, being Jimmy, is looking for someone else to blame. Jimmy just refuses to take responsibility, which gets brought up more and more and more as the game goes on. And so now Jimmy's trying to convince himself that he's not the bad guy, Swansea's the bad guy, and he's trying to do the right thing. This leads to one of the most tense moments in the entire game. I absolutely love this part, so you're about to see that. I do like how, since you're playing as Jimmy and you see everything from his perspective, they try to paint Swansea as a much more villain than anything, even though we all know Jimmy's the real villain of the story. If you look at it objectively, Swansea could actually be seen as the hero. Yeah, sure, he's not a great guy or anything, but it's clear that he cared about the people on the crew, other than, like, Jimmy, of course. And some people might say, well, he killed Daisuke, so how could he be good? But, I mean, I'd take an instant death over a long and slow and painful one, so he kind of did him a favor if we're being honest. This next scene is actually one of my favorite parts in the entire game, and it brings up a good point that I do want to touch on. Jimmy shoots and kills Swansea. I do find the point really interesting. He says that, whenever he was drinking booze and all that, those were the best days of his life. But he chased sobriety and getting better and living better and being a good man. But that made him miserable. So he's wondering, what was the point of all of it? And I find that point to be super interesting. Like, why do anything that you hate but it makes you better? You're just going to be miserable, but you're objectively seen as a better person. But it doesn't make you happy. And Swansea spent his whole life trying to fit in with society whenever all he wanted was to, continue with his addiction. Swansea is a man filled with regret, and that is the main thing about his character that you might not see at first. He placed himself in a situation that he hates all because society says it's good to be in that situation. But in the end, it didn't matter because he was miserable. And in his final moments, he gets to tell Jimmy about the monster he is, which of course Jimmy's like, yeah, I'm going to say that everything's going to be okay, which neither of them believe. But in my opinion, Swansea went out high, so not bad. Also, notice how miserable Swansea is before he gets like a hold of the mouthwash and becomes drunk off mouthwash all the time. After he does that, he seems to be happy literally all the time. Now, in this part of the game, I believe that this is Jimmy feeling guilt for what he did to Curly. Finally, it took you long enough. And now he has to deal with the guilt of what he did to Curly.
Tis old Mother Goose's birthday. We're giving her a party. A party, a party, a party for Mother Goose.
The baker man, he served the cake. It was a sight to see.
Okay, so let's be honest. This is probably one of the most confusing parts of the game, but don't worry, I'm here. So, if you remember, Jimmy keeps trying to portray himself as a hero and convince himself and everyone else that he's the hero in this story. But every single time he tries to be the hero, he just ends up hurting everyone. So, in his mind, he's the hero because he's helping Curly eat whenever, he's forcing Curly to eat his own leg. It's not necessarily a good thing to do. But again, this is just Jimmy trying to convince everyone that he's a hero whenever he's not. Okay, so keep in mind, all of this is taking place in Jimmy's head. So he's trying to seek approval from Curly, the person that he's traumatized the most. And so in his own head, he has a conversation with Curly where Curly says, "Nah, it's all good, bro," which, I mean, in real life, Curly would probably not say that. Which again shows Jimmy having a lack to take responsibility for anything at all. Also, something else that I just thought about that's sad is that every single crew member, other than Jimmy, of course, died thinking that Curly tried to kill all of them. So they died thinking Curly's a bad guy. Which is also probably part of the reason why Anya made Curly watch her take her own life. For that, and probably for the reason that he didn't do anything about Jimmy whenever he found out what happened. I think that you can realize what that's referencing. Now, I gotta be honest, I don't think he feels guilt for what he did with Anya, but this is just him having a taste of his own medicine. The horrors that were, afflicted onto Anya are now being afflicted onto Jimmy, and now he has to deal with that. The baby crying that you hear throughout the whole chase is obviously a reference to what he did to Anya. Also, Jimmy has to run and avoid the monster, which could also be seen as him running and avoiding responsibility for what he's done.
Polly says,
Now, I think that conversation with Polly and Jimmy is really important because it's Jimmy's delusional self talking with the truth. And when he's faced with the truth, he denies it. He still believes that he's a good guy and he tries to tell Polly that he's a good guy, but Polly calls him out on that because, again, it's the truth. And remember, all of this is a mental struggle. So Jimmy knows that he's a monster deep down, but he doesn't want to admit that. He's convinced himself that he's not, and he's tried to convince everyone else that he's not, that he's the hero, but he's just not. He's a absolutely horrible person. And now we're about to see the last sequence in Mouthwashing. Absolute cinema. So I want to touch on the symbolism of all the characters real quick. So Jimmy represents all the evil in the world. Jimmy's a monster. Daisuke represents the young and innocence in the world. Anya represents the victim of the evil in the world. Swansea represents a man of regret, an old man who's wasted his life and he wishes he could take everything back. And Curly represents a bystander and an enabler. At least that's what I got from it. So let's go through why none of this would have happened if it wasn't for Jimmy being horrible. So he assaults Anya, resulting in the unwanted pregnancy. He then crashes the ship, trying to kill everyone on board instead of, going back and facing the consequences for what he's done. He then leaves Curly in an absolutely mangled way and tells everyone that he's the one that crashed the ship. He then causes Anya to take her own life right in front of Curly. He then manipulates Daisuke into doing something he doesn't want to do that gets him killed. He then straight up shoots Swansea in the face, and then he cuts off Curly's leg and makes him eat it. He then stuffs Curly in the cryopod to make him suffer for 20 or more years. And then he takes his own life because he'd rather not be alive than have to deal with everything that he's done and take responsibility. He dies while trying to convince himself that he's dying a hero and dying for a good cause whenever he's not. And after he does that, the game ends. And the story finishes. The writing is just absolutely amazing. I think it's a perfect story. I can't think of a single complaint about it. They really need to turn this game into a movie or something. And lastly, if you watch this far, you should subscribe because this is only my third video and this took a long time to make, so I hope it actually does well. But I had a blast making this video. I love the game and I love making videos, and I've been wanting to talk about it for a while now. And I just started up my YouTube channel, so I'm like, okay, why not do it now? But yeah, if you watch this far, you have no idea how much that means to me that, someone thinks my content's worth enough to watch the whole thing. And again, as a reminder on the way out, ignore the beanie. It's only temporary. Alright, see ya!